Welcome to the Ascend podcast. Today I'm your host. My name is Julia Stallings, and I brought Brandy Elrod to talk about how to go from clay shooting to hunting in the great outdoors. Brandy is an amazing friend, colleague, instructor, and guys, this is going to be good, so stay tuned.
Welcome to the Ascend podcast, a podcast by and for women in the outdoors. Every episode delivers real stories, practical how-tos, and a welcoming community to help you start, sharpen, or rediscover your passion for the outdoors. Authentic women, real stories, outdoor adventures, Ascend. Presented by Ducks Unlimited, the leader in wetlands conservation. Your next adventure starts here, the Ascend podcast.
Welcome to Ascend Podcast. My name is Julia. I'll be your host today. And today's topic that we're going to go over is how to go from the clay target field to hunting in the great outdoors. Joining me today, I have someone very special. Her name is Brandy Elrod. Not only is she a colleague, a friend, a hunter, an amazing instructor, she has done something super impressive, and that is help the youth generation, help women feel confident in taking that next step and learning how to shoot, learning how to hunt, and learning how to just be confident. Brandy, welcome to Ascend Podcast. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Thank you, Julia. I'm actually really excited to be here. I know we go way back, but I've been looking forward to this forever. I've been in the shooting world for about 12 years now. I got my start in the youth shooting world coaching a high school team. And then that kind of led to going off the deep end. That's how we met. And I started competing in Olympic trap. And from there, that put me on the world stage and kind of gave me this platform to help others. And so since then, I've dove into the instruction side, and I really focus on helping women, youth, and those with limb differences. Probably one of my favorite things to do is teach kids with limb differences that think they can't even lift a shotgun how to do it, even if they're missing their arms, their hands, whatever. And it's also led me into the upland hunting and waterfowl world.
That is just amazing, Brandy. And we are so happy to have you on our podcast today. I know you're a great asset. You are so knowledgeable. And I think these topics that we're going to discuss, you have so much insight on. So basically, what I'm thinking is there's been so much talk on recoil and gun fit for beginners. I think you have so much insight to share, and I would love to discuss that today, along with tips on anything you can do in the clay target world to practice for hunting in the outdoors, as well as equipment recommendations that you find have been most useful. And then maybe if we have time, I have some rapid fire questions for you that I've gotten from my followers that I think you would be perfect to answer.
Awesome.
So let's just jump in. And, deep diving into recoil. Have you ever experienced issues with new shooters with recoil and gun fit?
100%. I deal with that every time I give a lesson, do a clinic, whether it's a regular target clinic or a wing shooting clinic. The biggest thing that I find is a lot of these women or kids, they come to my clinics, especially if they're brand new, and they're bringing a borrowed gun. And usually it was their uncles, their grandpas, whoever would hand them a gun, and they pull it out of the gun sleeve, the gun case, and I immediately know, oh boy, this is going to beat them. And so I actually carry guns with me, especially whenever I'm teaching beginners, because I want them to have a pleasant experience. One of the things that I have found in coaching, especially in some of the clinics that I do that I've received grants for, is it's all about reintroduction. We have a lot of women that have shot early on in age, and they had an unpleasant experience. The gun beat the crap out of them, and they just put it down, didn't touch it again. And so for me, that's one of the things that I walked them through of recoil is a bad thing. And there are ways to prevent recoil in shotguns with the gun itself and ammo. And so one of the guns that I have all have had as much recoil reduction taken out of them. I personally cannot handle recoil due to my birth injury, my neck, my back, all of that is pretty much destroyed. And so recoil is a factor for me. It was a factor for me whenever I was, shooting 200, 300, 400 rounds a day. And even now it's a factor. And I will not pick up a gun if I know it's going to beat me up. So with that, having said that, the biggest thing that women want to do is they want to pick up light guns. Light guns are no-nos. The lighter the gun, the heavier the recoil, unless if something has been done to it. And what I'm talking about is you can add different stocks that have recoil reduction, whether it's a wood stock that we have added a pad to it that has some type of hydraulic system in it, springs, weights, anything like that to help the gun in the shoulder. Another thing is we have what's called robo stocks, precision fit stock, ergonomics, all of those make a robo stock and they have these hydraulic systems and weighted systems in them. Is that something you necessarily have to have? No. It also starts with how you mount the gun. Mounting the gun is absolute key. Whenever I teach, I always start with, we have a natural pocket in our shoulder. I call it the Jesus pocket. I tell every woman that I feel like Jesus thought that all women should shoot shotguns, and we have this natural pocket in both of our shoulders that the gun just naturally fits into. And I teach them how to mount to the pocket and then place their heads on the gun. That right there, the proper mount, will help take some of the recoil out if they insist on shooting their gun. And then we go on further into, okay, length of pull. If the gun is too long, we're going to have recoil because they don't have as much control of the gun. They can't keep it in their shoulder. They're having to stretch their necks out or they're way back on the gun. And so they're hitting themselves in the cheek. We go into where our eyes are over the top of the rib. Again, that can affect recoil. If you can't see and your eyes are sitting low on the rib, which is very common in women, we have higher cheekbones. Guns are not made for high cheekbones. They're the average gun off the shelf is made for a 5'11", 180-pound male. And that is not most women. So if you're sitting low on a gun, you lift your head to look for your target, your bird, whatever. What are you going to do? You're going to feel that recoil because you're going to pop yourself in the face. So those are all things that, starting with the right mount, and if you have the ability, a gun that fits, you can cut out 60 to 70% of recoil right there. And having the right weighted gun. A 6-pound gun is going to have a heavier recoil than a 9-pound gun. But now we're getting into competition guns versus hunting guns. Hunting guns are lighter. Why? We need to be able to lift them fast. We're walking through the fields with them. We're carrying them in the mountains. My wing shooting gun, my upland gun, weighs 6 pounds. But it doesn't have any recoil because I've done things to it to reduce the recoil. My competition gun, when I was competing professionally, weighs 9.8 pounds. It was a Haas, but you want a heavier gun because you're shooting so much, it'll slow you down and makes you more fluid and makes you basically, I always used to say, it makes you look like a ballerina. Finesse, grace. So recoil is the number one reason I feel like women do not stick with the shotgun sports wing shooting because they have an unpleasant experience, whether it's they go to a gun shop, they decide, they go and tell the gun store cashier or whatever, hey, I want to buy a shotgun, I want to do XYZ, this is the budget I have. And they're going to automatically probably give them the lightest weight gun and a 20 or 28 gauge. And sometimes they give them a youth model, and they don't necessarily need a youth model, and the fit just is not there. So that's
Brandy,
the
I feel like
go ahead.
Oh, yeah, Brandy, I feel like, that can be definitely applied not just to women, but for youth shooters
Mhm.
and junior shooters as well. Like, they're trying to get into the sport, and that could hold a huge problem of, like, if the gun's too large or the gun's too light. In your profession, since you've instructed a ton of people, where do you find the most problems?
I
Like,
would
is the
say
gun too long or is the gun too heavy?
too long. 100% too long.
Too long.
'Cause you can do weight training to make that gun where it's not heavy after about a month. Especially whenever I was coaching youth sports, it was nothing to see, though, especially here in Texas, those 9 and 10-year-olds with guns longer than they are tall. And it was quite interesting to watch them. I mean, some of those kids could handle those guns with no problem. But then you had the little bitty babies that are 60 pounds toting this really long gun, a lot of times an over and under, which always dumbfounded me. I mean, I'm all for an over and under when you're competing, but not when you're starting out. And like hefting it over the shooting stands and trying to
Oh,
control it,
no.
and then it's beating them backwards. And so a lot of that could be controlled with a shorter stock. If it is not hard to cut a stock down. Would I recommend you go get a bandsaw and go in your shop or garage and cut your stock? Absolutely not. Will I do it? 100%. Do it all the time, but not to somebody else's gun. You definitely want to find what's called a gun fitter, not a gunsmith. There's a difference. Gunsmiths repair your guns. Gun fitters fit your guns. And sometimes they're the same person, but a lot of times they're not. Go find a good gun fitter and
Would
have that. Go ahead.
would you suggest, like, a lot of gun fitters are at, like, these events that, and I know high school shooters, they have programs where, they go to all these tournaments and stuff. Do you think they're gun fitters out there, or do you think they're gunsmiths
I
that are
see.
more likely to be there?
I see kind of a mix, especially at the bigger stuff.
Mm,
You're in it like in these gun shops that have, like, let's say at the National Shooting Complex, at the Grand, or at Sparta, places like that that have storefronts. A lot of times they're going to
mhm.
have gun fitters that are also gunsmiths. Now, if you just have John Smith pull up in his trailer and it just says gunsmith on the side, I would question that. I've
Mhm.
seen all too much many of my former kids' guns ruined because they went to a gunsmith or somebody that was recommended and they chopped up their gun. And
Oh,
once you chop, you can't add back. So, I mean, you can, but it's going to cost you some
yeah.
money to add that back, especially whenever you get into the more expensive stocks. And so, I really, really caution and do your research whenever you are looking for a gun fitter, especially for youth and women. I feel like gun fitters can fit men, but whenever you get into children, because they're gonna grow, and I'm a firm believer in fitting a gun that can be adjusted to grow with the child, or fitting a woman, there's just a difference. There is a big difference in that. And like I used to always watch, I mainly got high school kids, but every now and then I would get occasional middle schoolers or a sibling or something like that. And it was very interesting to watch them grow from 11, 12 years old all the way to senior year in high school and the difference in their gun fit. That's something else I always recommend as you are developing in your shooting, your gun fit may change because the way you mount your gun is going to change. And the way that you are getting into the gun, the use of the gun, all of that is going to change. And so I'm a big proponent of if you're getting your gun fitted, You need an adjustable comb because of, especially as women, we gain and lose weight every month. And so
Yes,
we
we
need to
do.
be able to move that comb up and down, side to side, just based off of how much weight we've lost in our face.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've definitely struggled with this issue. We've
Yeah.
shot together. It is an issue that doesn't get talked about enough, especially with youth shooters. I feel like, especially when you get to the high school level, you have a wonderful shooter. She's a young girl, and then all of a sudden her scores are so high and then they're so low. And it's a simple fix of just adjusting that gun stock
Mhm.
to make sure she's looking where she thinks she is. That's huge. Yeah. When you talk about gun fit, what is the biggest issue you've seen in youth shooters and transitioning, I guess, to the outdoors? Like, is it having that stock or having the heaviness just for youth shooters in general? I know we talked about women of like it being long, but when you talk about outdoors, what would you suggest?
100% the stock is everything. I Yeah, I don't think that the weight of the gun per se with youth shooter because they're gonna get stronger. It's amazing how fast kids grow, and get strong. I had a great conversation with Linda Mears, Travis Mears' mom, one day, and, they help with the local 4-H, and they start the little ones out, they give them literally a can 2 cans of green beans, and they tell those kids, "Go home, and then when you can lift those 100 times a night, then we'll give you a bigger can of green beans." And they keep growing those kids up on their size of the cans because it's building their muscles so they can lift the guns. I mean, it
So
works.
basically, Popeyes.
Literally,
Yeah,
literally. I mean,
literally.
I you know, when my high school team was the most successful is when they had professional athlete Coach Elrod, because I made those kids have the same workout schedule that I had. At first they hated me, and then they realized their stamina was there. They weren't, because I was noticing their scores were falling off at that 7th, 8th station. And straight fatigue. They're getting tired holding their guns, they're running out of breath, just all these things. And so whenever I started making them do the same exercises I did, yoga, breathing, all of that, the scores started going up. The fatigue stopped dropping off, and they were making it to the end because, I mean, some of these tournaments, these kids are shooting 200-300 rounds a day, 3 and 4 days in a row. And
Yeah,
so
they're marathons.
yes, literally, and that's how I always described it. They're marathons, they're not sprints, and
Yeah.
it's the same thing when you're starting a kid out. I would tell every kid, "Okay, I need you to get 5-pound dumbbells, and these are the exercises you need to do, and you need to do them at least 4 to 5 days a week, and you'll have no problem lifting your guns."
Hey, no, that's amazing that you took initiative. I feel like a lot of coaches, they're so focused on scores and, just shooting the tournament, they forget it's the small basics that help you
Mhm.
get through that tournament and make it into that marathon versus the sprint. That's amazing, Brandy. Well, I have one question just because like we're talking about, the outdoors and getting people more involved and, stamina, right? What are some tips that you've seen have been really helpful in transitioning that you can practice on the clay field to prepare you for hunting season? I know that's a huge topic of like
Mhm.
you want to dust off the rust. And what have you seen that has been more helpful?
The skeet field, and it pains me to say that, but
Oh no.
I feel like
Crap.
the American skeet field is the best place. One, because you can find American skeet fields in every state, near every metroplex. Um, and because I mean, I get sporting clays is a thing of states with a lot of land, or a lot of useless land, honestly. You mainly
Yes.
find them in places
Yes.
with um, where it looks like Jurassic Park or it's going to flood. But if you don't have
Yes.
access to sporting clays, the skeet field 100%. And stations 3, 4, and 5 are your best stations because that's going to be your crossing birds. 2 and stations 2 and 6 are going to help you with your quartering and going away birds. So you basically can practice any upland bird, any waterfowl bird on the skeet field.
Mm-hmm. That is going to be my biggest question is, I mean, duck seasons are right around the corner. Where would you start as like someone who's going to be like, hey, I want to dust off the rust today to prepare me to shoot these ducks? Where should I go on the skeet field? Name your 2 favorite stations.
1?
You said 3 or 4?
No, I would go 1. Station 1.
You would go 1.
Yeah, because they're incoming like they're going to land. And then I would probably go 5 because those ones that are flying,
5.
Yeah, crossing across that pond. So, hands down.
Oh, perfect. So, 1 and 5.
Yeah.
So, if you're preparing for duck season and you're hitting the ski field,
1 and 5. Yeah, I mean, you could
five.
do 7. You could do 7 and 5 because 7, like if they're coming up off, the water, and then they're still coming in, and then 5, hands down. 5 is the best station to practice pretty much any crossing bird.
Nice. I agree with that. I'm a big fan of 7, station 7, because the going out, obviously trap target, kind of lover over here. And then of course you can get a crosser every now and then if it's high or if you have some wind.
Right.
But no, I love that. I love that. Honestly, I have another question then. For duck hunting, what's the biggest thing you've seen to help shoot more ducks using that shotgun? Because I feel like I've always seen like either I get overwhelmed with seeing the target or I take my head off the gun. What are your thoughts?
For duck hunting, okay, this is going to sound crazy, and this is going to depend on your...
Bring it on.
Yeah, this is going to depend on your range. So I live in a town with a very tiny range that's actually focused for the 4-H team, but there's nobody ever there. And I do have my own machines at my house too. But I take a bucket and I sit at station 1 or station 2 and I shoot from the bucket because if you're shooting from a blind, whether it's a ground blind, what I call a coffin blind, whatever, you've got to be able to raise yourself. Well, when you're raising yourself, you're going in the motion of mounting the gun, looking down the gun, all of that. And so doing that all at the same time, which you can do this at home, you just don't have targets. And I highly recommend doing this at home too. But practicing that way and moving, that whole motion of moving to your shoulder and getting your head on the gun. Because I know we tend to want to, oh crap, bang, bang, bang. And then it's like heads off the gun, we're hitting ourselves. Like, no, practice.
Oh my gosh, no, that's too funny. I've been in that position where I'm like, just got out of like trap season where you're pre-mounted and you go to like the duck blind and all of a sudden you're like, why can't I hit a target? And your head's not even on the gun. You're like, well, what was I thinking? I was like, your head has to be on the stock if you want to make your shots, Julia. So that is too funny. I like the bucket idea.
Yes, no, seriously. And again, make sure you have permission. Don't just go whip a bucket out and there's 50 people on the range. Don't do that. You'll probably get in trouble. But if you have the ability to do something like that, I highly recommend it. And even practicing at home, I'm a big believer in gun mounts. I know some people don't believe in them. When I was first trying to make the USA team, and my closest range was 4 hours from me, and I was driving 4 hours one way, 3 days a week, practicing. And whenever I couldn't practice there, I did have access to a mod trap that I actually turned up, and to get it to go as fast as possible. I did a lot of gun mounts in my house. A lot of gun mounts. I would leave my gun in the corner of a room that I would have to pass multiple times a day. And every time I passed that gun, I would lift it 10 times. And so I do the same thing whenever I don't compete professionally anymore. I don't shoot near as much as I used to. My body tells me that. But whenever I'm getting ready for hunting season, Oh, there are no words. Whenever I'm getting ready for hunting season, I do a lot of gun mounts with my hunting guns because I want to be able to move them up fast. I do a lot of upland hunting. I'm not as much of a waterfowl hunter. Not gonna lie, I don't like getting up at 3 a.m. and freezing to death. I like taking strolls in the mountains
That's
and
fair.
in the desert at 10 o'clock in the morning. So I practice the scenarios that I would put myself in. I mean, it is nothing. Luckily, I live on quite a bit of land, but it is nothing to see me walking down the road with my gun, and I'll continue walking and act like I see birds, draw the gun, bang, bang. Or in the house, especially if I'm practicing to go hunt, whether if I'm in a pop-up blind, A-frame or whatever, I'm practicing those motions because of that's just not something we do on an everyday basis. And so we've got to work those core muscles, those shoulder muscles, all of that kind of stuff. And so I'm putting my head on the gun because, yes, I have shot some birds without my head on the gun. Not going to lie, I've shot some from the hip before, but there's that.
Hey, you're talking to a trick shooter. It's okay.
I know.
No judgment here. No judgment here, It's okay, 3.5 kicks a little bit. But
See, can't
from
do
the
that.
hip is kind of fun.
Well, a lot of people, so I can do a few shots from the hip and stuff like that, but I use my 12, and people are like, why do you do that? I was like, because less recoil, and I can control it more because the gun's heavier.
Right? I'm a 12 gauge girly right here. Like, that is all I shoot. Everyone always asks me, like, "Why don't you shoot a 20 or a 24 or a 410?" I'm like, "I can't do it. I feel like a BB gun at that point."
That's funny. Yeah, no,
So,
I was like that, and since I started shooting upland, especially if you're like 20, 30 yards, a 12 gauge doesn't leave you any meat. So because
no.
coming
No.
from that
Just
competition.
feathers.
Yeah, literally. Well, that's the thing. Coming from the competition world, you talking about that precision. When I first started moving into the upland world and I would be like, okay, I gotta get set up and I gotta do this and I gotta do that. Yeah, no, the birds are gone. Um, and then whenever I figured out, wait a minute, this is all instinct shooting. So I had to completely change my mindset. And then it became oh crap, I'm blowing the birds up. And because I was so dead on the bird and it's just feathers left, and it's like, oh, I got to do something about this. And so, yes, I have switched to a 20, probably going to switch to a 28 eventually. I'm working myself down the baby steps. So, yeah, I
Hey,
do.
it's okay.
I know. I do upland hunt with the 20. I waterfowl hunt with the 12. And then I still shoot clay targets with the 12, except for during hunting season. I only bring my 20 out just because that is my upland gun.
Amazing. Hey, look, I need to take the steps. I know I need to take the steps. I haven't had the guts to take the steps yet, but I know it's coming. I'm getting older. I need to be easier on my body. Like, it's needed. But Brandy, let's just take a few seconds. Let's hear from our sponsors real quick, and then we'll jump back on.
Dry Pocket, gear that stands up to the wild. Experience waterproof hunting gear and Mossy Oak's signature camo design for every hunt. Built to be waterproof, durable, and reliable, you can trust your gear when it matters most. Stay dry, stay ready. Our products float with a watertight seal, keeping your essentials airtight and scent-free. The top seals automatically, no manual closure needed. With Dry Pocket's Mossy Oak collection, you're ready for any adventure. Gear up at drypocket.com and use promo code ASCEND for a special offer. From the marsh to the mountains, trust starts from the ground up. For over 25 years, the original Muck Boot Company has built 100% waterproof boots designed to keep hunters dry, warm, and comfortable in the toughest conditions. Our boots are made to perform as hard as you do. Stay dry, stay comfortable, and stay in the hunt with Muck Boots. 100% waterproof, built for the toughest conditions. Muck, the official boot of hunters.
Welcome back from the break. So, Brandy, okay, we have talked about recoil. We've talked about gun fit. We've talked about what to practice with on the field to help you better prepare for hunting season. Let's talk equipment recommendations. I mean, again, you've had some great recommendations for gun fit. What's some things you've seen that people just need to like check out? Like they're just awesome.
So the biggest thing, this is one thing I will say you don't need to check out. Just because it
Oh,
is,
don't.
yeah, just because it's pink or it says it's for a woman doesn't necessarily mean it's gonna fit you. There are some companies out there that, yes, I wholeheartedly agree, are starting to come a long way with their shotguns. And they are definitely more likely to fit you out of the box. But I caution you, just because you go buy one of those shotguns and you pay a lot of money for it, it doesn't mean it's going to fit you. But it is a good start. So that's one of the biggest things I see, especially I'll have women come to my clinics or younger girls come to my clinics and they're like, oh, well, we went and bought XYZ because it was for a woman, and then they mount the gun and it does not fit them. And then I have to tell them that their $8,000 shotgun does not fit them. That's not a
Oh,
conversation.
no.
Yeah, that is not the best conversation in the world. But I do the best that I can. I'm really good with doing what I call a field fit. There's a lot you can do to a shotgun with some electrical tape and some cardboard. And so I'll make changes on the fly. Now, having said that, I am a firm believer of don't go buy the cheapest gun to start with. I don't care if you're buying for a kid, an adult, or whatever. In the shotgun world, cheap is not a term I would put in the same sentence. I always tell people, especially whenever I used to teach. Now, I was very privileged that I taught at a private school, so there was a little bit more of a fluency there. I would just always tell the parents, go buy the best gun that your pocketbook can afford. I am very open when someone comes to me, and I get questions usually weekly out of the blue from people I don't even know, from women that say, hey, I need a shotgun. My first question to them is, how much do you want to spend? And I know that's probably not a question I should be asking, but it is a question I should be asking because that's going to tell me what I need to recommend. And then I'm going to tell them, don't go buy the women's version of that shotgun. Go buy the regular one because that way you're not paying what I call the pink tax, and go find you a good gun fitter.
No, it's so true. The pink tax is very real.
Yes.
I mean, it is.
Unfortunately.
Now, I got a question for you. I got a question for you. Okay,
Yeah.
so we talk about the pink tax. Now, I know I've shot shotguns. There's junior guns out there. Would you
Yes.
recommend a junior gun to a woman, or a junior gun to even a small child that may be a little bit, maybe in middle school or even high school? They're not really junior, but you can kind of upsize it. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm all for them. I know there's a lot of better manufacturers out there that have what they call those micro or junior stocks, and I'm a firm believer in those if you can switch the stock out. Or you can add to the stock. So a lot of people don't realize you can add to a stock with spacers. I've done that for a lot of kids. Or you can add Jones pads or extension pads, anything like that to lengthen that gun out so you get more longevity out of that gun when you're talking children. When you're talking women, here's the thing. Most people think, oh, okay, well, she's 5'8", so she can go with a gun right out of the box. Any gun. Not necessarily. What if she has a short neck? What if she has shorter arms? So
Mm-hmm.
and then
Yeah.
I've had kids that are like 5'3", 5'4", can shoot a regular shotgun that's got a length of pull of 14.25 right out of the box. So, because they've got longer necks, longer arms. It just depends on your body itself. Your body is going to determine what shotgun you need to buy.
No, absolutely. And you brought up a really good point. you talk about over and unders and you talk about semi-automatics, right? And, I feel like in the hunting world, you always see semi-autos and you see a lot of those, especially when you first start shooting trap, right? With over and unders, you have the option to have an adjustable stock, right? Or an adjustable butt pad that would help you fit that gun. Now, with semi-automatics, do you have that same option, or is there something in the box that you can use to get there to make it fit better?
So, absolutely. And I actually, whenever I quit competing, whenever I was competing professionally, I was sponsored by Blaser. Great guns, love the guns. They're not a beginner gun, unless if that's what your pocketbook can afford. But whenever I quit competing, I'm like, well, I don't have to shoot these anymore. My husband got lucky because he got my hand-me-downs. And I switched back to semis. I started with a semi. My very first gun was a Field Benelli Montefeltro. Probably should have kept it, pretty nostalgic, but we didn't know if I was going to keep shooting. So my husband was like, let's try a field gun. I immediately had that gun fit. I personally have been very privileged to not know what it's like to shoot a gun straight out of the box. Because I've always been surrounded by people that were just like, hey, this is what needs to happen so you are successful. And so that gun, we immediately went to a gun fitter. In my opinion, probably the best gun fitter that has ever lived. May he rest in peace. He unfortunately died recently. But he just had me shooting. It was a journey, of course, due to my birth injury, but he had me shooting and hitting clays the first day out. And so that's
amazing.
And no recoil. That's huge. And then I progressed.
That's huge.
We started with a 20 gauge. My husband and my gun fitter, both men. So, and then 6 months, I was already out shooting that gun. We moved up to a 12. I made the mistake of buying a women's 12 gauge. Guess what? Didn't fit. Had to go do about $1,500 worth of stock work to it. So then, whenever I started competing professionally, I knew that semi was not going to hold up. I love me a semi, but at the end of the day, unless if you have multiple of them, they are not going to handle 300, 400, 500 rounds a day, 5-6 days a week. So it's just not going to happen. The springs are not going to hold up, all of that kind of stuff. You're going to constantly have to keep them cleaned and maintenance. So that's why multiple semis is the best option. And so that's when I moved to an over and under. Now, I've gone back to a semi now that I'm not competing professionally because I don't have to lift that heavy gun anymore. Don't get me wrong, I loved my Blaser. My Blaser was actually famous on Instagram because she was purple. But
love it.
I'm a semi person. I love my semis. I've got 8 or 9 of them now. As far as in the A400s, and I do have a Siren L4S. And the thing is with those is I know that they're not going to beat me up. I know that I can lift them up fast. I know how to clean them. That's the kicker. Whenever you get into those gas-driven guns, you've got to know how to clean them. And I know also one of the other things, let's say I'm somewhere and my gun breaks. If someone's got an A400, I can pick it up and shoot it. So I will say though, when you get into the semis, especially in the hunting world, you're gonna have to, I'm not gonna go take a Woodstock waterfowl hunting. You really need to get into the synthetic stocks. I have had my A400 not cycle. Whenever I was hunting in South Dakota, it was a -9 with a 40-mile-an-hour wind, and we were getting snowed on. It stopped cycling because it was so cold. I've since learned how to work through that now. But those can be the downfalls of semi-automatics is they just don't cycle because they can be very finicky.
Yeah, no. Have you ever used, I know this is like an old trick, but moleskin, when we were talking about gun fit, have you ever used moleskin to get a little bit up on the gun for someone that needs a quick fix or, a youth shooter?
100%. So I actually carry what I call my little coach's box, and in my coach's box has moleskin. It's got athletic tape. Athletic tape is good too for building up a little bit if you have to. Or let's say you've got a kid that's rolling their hand up on the grip. If you'll put a little bit of athletic tape further down that grip, they have that feel, so they leave their hand. Because if you roll your hand up on the grip, you can trap your trigger. So yeah, I've got moleskin in there. I have cardboard. I've got foam. This is cheap of me, but whenever you're having to fit 30, 40 guns at a time, I cut up styrofoam plates to make little long rectangles to use to build up stocks, and electrical tape. The beauty of electrical tape, and this is why I love electrical tape, it does not leave a sticky residue on wooden or synthetic stocks.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yes.
Especially when you're trying to, have instructors or even coaches. Coaches, that's huge for coaches. I feel like coaches need to have these tips when you're dealing with kids.
Yes, I have a lot of, and then I have tools to work on pretty much any gun. And I travel with that stuff. So I have instructed all over the US. I've even been invited to instruct in Dubai, but no. And so one of the things is I travel with this stuff because you never know what's going to happen. I cannot tell you how many times I've had to fix a gun out in the field, on the range, whatever, not just for gun fit, but just in general, something happened to the gun. I've taught myself how to break down most of these guns for that reason, and then put them back together, of course, because that's the worst thing, especially whenever you break one down and you're like, oh no, where does this spring go?
Where does the spring go? Oh no. Okay, I got a question for you. In I have a Benelli, so they're great. They can go through anything. You can use them as a paddle. You can use them as a walking stick at that point sometimes. Like they're beast mode. They have shims in them. Would you recommend people using those shims to make that fit better?
I had that in the back of my head and it just wasn't coming to the front. Okay, so
No, you're fine.
If you buy a gun brand new, you're going to have a bunch of stuff that comes in your box. You're going to have your chokes, probably a choke wrench, maybe some oil or lube, your manual, but they're going to come with these little black things that are rectangle, oblong. Those are your shims. And they're going to have numbers on them and letters. Those mean things, whether you're going to cast on, cast off, also changing the height of that comb up and down. I highly recommend, one, finding someone. You don't have to go to a gun fitter, but if you have someone that you know, especially if you're brand new, that knows how to see an eye over the top of the rib and can understand, okay, I know it needs to be directly over the top, but my eye is looking down the left. What shim do I change that out with? Putting the shim in the gun is going to move that stock and bring your eye closer to the top of the rib. So whenever you open those boxes, and oh my gosh, when I used to coach and I used to have a very large team, 60 to 70 kids on the team, they would throw them away. And I'm like, what? No, do not throw those away. So at the beginning of every year, whenever I would give my spiel on, okay, parents, get those wallets out. And I would say, bring everything to the first practice. Do not even take the gun out of the box. Just bring the whole box, the gun, everything to the first practice and let me put it together. Let me do the shims, all of that kind of stuff. But the cool thing is, especially Benelli, Beretta, your two main semi-auto manufacturers, you can buy those online. And they're not that expensive, thankfully. I've even seen people 3D printing them now. So,
that's amazing.
Yes, where you can get the different degrees and all of that kind of stuff. It's pretty cool. And sometimes you even have to use more than one. So it just depends on what you're having to do.
Yeah.
But yes, the shims are everything.
I definitely feel like they are super important and they're not talked about enough. I see tons of hunters, even old school hunters, where they're like, "Hey, I need trouble. Like I'm having trouble shooting a target." And I'm like, "No wonder you're having trouble shooting a target. Have you ever patterned your gun? It's going the wrong way, man. Or you're looking like 10 feet below, not even your eyes, not even over the barrel." I was like, "Where's
Yes.
your shims?
And that goes
The
back to
shims. It's the shims."
yes, that goes back to recoil. Those shims can help reduce recoil too because they can get your eye higher so you're not looking up and then punching yourself in the face.
Let's talk about that honestly, because I feel like that's not talked about enough is your sight picture. How do you know if you are looking, if you're low on the gun? What would you recommend for people to look at?
I
Literally, no pun intended.
so basically, if you're just seeing like all gun and you're not like seeing above the gun, you've got a problem. This is weird. Again, one of my little tricks that I do, I never said I was normal. I tell the kids to mount in the mirror and look and see where their eye is at. And I tell them, hey, even have your parents zoom in and take a picture of where your eye is on over that rib. Whenever I first start teaching someone to mount, I take pictures and show them. I take pictures of their profile. I take pictures of where their eyes are over the rib, all of that, because I want them to be able to go home and mimic it. And so that's the easiest way that I tell them how to figure out, okay, am I low? Am I high? Whatever. Another telltale sign is A, they've got bruises on their cheeks, and B, if they're shooting over the top of everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also another telltale sign is if you are taking your head off the gun, right? Which refers to the bruises on the
Yes.
cheeks because you cannot see your target. You're like, oh, hey, where'd it go?
Yep.
And you're just like, man, that I missed that shot. I have no idea. And you have that no connection kind of feel that you probably get all the time coaching the little ones
Well, here's another trick.
and even women or even
Yes.
guys. I mean, it doesn't
Well,
matter.
the
Everyone.
the best way, especially with women, because we're such visual learners, and another thing with women is we want to research everything and we want to think about everything. Like I tell women, our hands are just holding the gun. These are not moving the gun. Our eyes are moving the gun. So think about if you're driving down the road and you're driving and you're driving and you see a deer over off to the left. What happens? That hand goes to the left because it follows your eyes to the left. So the steering wheel goes to the left, the car goes to the left. Wherever you are looking is where that barrel is going to go. Wherever you're looking, your hands are going to follow. So if my gun doesn't fit and I'm sitting low on the gun and I'm having to look up, that gun is going to go up.
That's exactly right. That's 100% right. And again, that falls back into recoil, gun fit, feeling confident. You can name all the things, and it's like the full circle, a trifecta,
Yep.
right
Yeah.
there. Okay, question for you then. With like, you want to have everything fitted, customized, stuff like that. Obviously, that's not in everyone's pocketbook. What brands would you recommend if you have a couple that you've worked with that have worked for you, or just a great starting point where you can at least modify it to be more advanced if you want to? That would you suggest?
So if we're buying a semi, I am under
Hmm.
$1,000. The Beretta Ultima, Beretta A400 Ultima, hands down. You can take that gun on the range. You can take it
Hmm.
waterfowl hunting, upland hunting, anything. It is a synthetic stock though, so it is a little bit harder to modify. But as long as you've got a good gun fitter that knows about dealing with synthetic stocks, you'll be fine. You a lot of times can find those guns for in a 12 gauge around $800. You cannot go wrong with an $800 gun. You want to go up a little bit in price. I love the Beretta A400 line. I have the entire line. And so it just depends on what you want to do. I love the Beretta A400 Explorer. It is an all-around gun. It is a wood stock. Do I take it duck hunting? I do. I just wipe it off if I get it muddy. But that gun is going to run you around $1,600. If you want to go up even
Hmm.
further in price, I really like the Siren L4Ss. Hence, I like a gas-driven gun. So I know like you're an inertia-driven person because you like the Benellis, and totally understandable. The Benelli Super Sport is a pretty awesome gun. But again, you're getting above that $2,000 range. And so I don't think there's
Yep.
any gun on the market that can beat the Beretta A300 Ultima for under $1,000. There's just not one out there, in my opinion, that is going to give you that soft recoil, can potentially fit you out of the box because that gun comes with spacers. And so you can take the gun from, I believe, 14 inches length of pull all the way up to 15 inches length of pull. And so, like, my husband has a 15.5-inch length of pull, so we actually had to add a few more spacers, but the gun fits him. And then whenever we get into the over and unders, there's a new gun on the market. Absolutely love. ACAR USA, AKKAR, is now making a women's gun. I have had them in my hands. They're $1,700 out of the box. They're absolutely beautiful. They come, the dimensions on the stock, in my opinion, are probably one of the closest I have ever seen to fitting the average woman. And they come with an adjustable comb. And that gun weighs 7.5 pounds and has no recoil. I have put the 12 and the 20 to the test. The 20 weighs like 7.3 or 7.4 pounds. The 12 weighs like 7.8 pounds. We've put both gauges to the test with varying ammo all the way up to some heavier hunting ammo, and the recoil stays the same. It's super, super light. I'm very, very impressed by that gun, and for a over and under with an adjustable comb that's pretty, it has a very pretty receiver and really nice wood for under $2,000. You can't beat that. You cannot beat that. I would even recommend that gun for a youth shooter, a smaller male, just because the length of pull on that gun out of the box is 13.5. So the average woman is in that 13.5 to 13.75 range, and super easy to add to it. But the big thing is that adjustable comb is huge.
No, that is definitely huge. I always tell people, like, hey, if you're getting into like clay target sports and you kind of want to get into hunting as well, you want to kind of do both. An adjustable comb, especially if you're a woman, because I know I've had trouble. It's hard to see over that barrel if you have like a smaller frame. I feel like they just don't make shotguns for women. They really don't. And so that's amazing to hear that's coming available.
Yeah, Dave Miller, a lot of you have probably heard of him. Mr. Has broken several world records. Pretty cool guy. It's his company, and he is a personal friend of mine, but I'm honest. And if I didn't like the product, I wouldn't recommend it. And whenever he shipped me the very first one that came in the United States, and I was like, oh my gosh, Dave, like, you've done it. Like, I was shocked. Very, very shocked.
It's unlocked.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, I have one more question for you. We did talk about, recoil, gun fit, and all that, and we did mention ammo. When you talk about ammo for recoil, what ammo would you recommend ounce-wise for beginner shooters?
I am a huge proponent. Now it depends, because semi-automatics sometimes will not cycle the lighter ammos. If you can get a semi-auto that will cycle lighter ammo, 7/8 ounce, 1200 FPS, 7.5s, all the way. Like, I know people get into that, oh, you need 1300, you need 1350. No, you don't. Science proves that it breaks up. It breaks up. In regular target shooting, that stuff breaks up so fast. If your gun will not handle a 7/8 ounce, 1 ounce, 1200s, 7.5s, all the way. I shoot that for everything. Now, obviously, I didn't shoot that whenever I was shooting international, but now, even now, I've kind of switched into the Halise world. I shoot that, and people are like, what? Why are you shooting that? I just like it. It's low recoil. It goes where, it goes bang. I just like it.
Oh, no. Hey, if it helps with recoil, that's the biggest thing I feel like people struggle with is they are scared of the recoil. When you talk about shotguns, they're like, oh, I don't like shotguns because of that recoil. And so you can accommodate that right off the bat with gun fit and ammo.
Mhm.
You've sold people.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, hey, I actually like this now. Okay. So, Brandy, I have a couple rapid fire questions for you since we do have time. I'm so excited. I've asked my followers, hey, what do you want to know from Brandy Elrod? And okay, here they are. So, first one's first, and then these are really quick.
Okay.
When is it worth waiting or saving for a better gun versus accepting a starter option?
Never accept the starter,
When's
always
that
buy
timeline?
never accept the starter, always buy the better gun. So I would wait. Wait until you can afford that gun that your pocketbook can afford. But again, remember, cheap and shotgun do not belong in the same sentence.
Okay. Okay, next question. The gauge you prefer and why. I think I can guess this.
Yeah. So I love a 12, especially when you're starting out. And people are like, what, wait, why? Because at the end of the day, you're sending more lead downrange and you're going to be a lot more successful the more lead you can send downrange. Now, if you're starting out hunting or if you've got a young kid, a 20 might not be a bad idea just for the mere factor of the weight. I'm not going to go stick an 8 or 9 pound gun in the hands of a 60-pound kid.
Okay, I have a question on that. So if you do have, a younger kid and they want to do a 20 gauge, would you recommend anything to help with that recoil or help them have a better experience?
Yes. So again, I'm not sponsored by this company. Love their product. I have their pads on all of my guns. Falcon Strike makes a pad that's got a recoil system built into the pad, and that pad will go on any shotgun. Any shotgun. And it takes out about
Oh.
80% of the recoil and muzzle bump. It
Oh,
is
I love it. I love
$200.
it. Okay.
$200 fix.
Oh, love it even more, especially if, that's perfect. Perfect price point, perfect range, fixes a problem. We love solutions. Okay, favorite shotgun model you have ever shot?
My Blazer. I love my Beretta A400s,
Oh.
but Sparkles, my purple Blazer, I think from the nostalgia and what she gave me. That gun gave me this amazing platform. I actually, whenever I quit shooting professionally, I sold off a couple of them, but I kept the original one, and she has a purple trigger too. And my husband actually shoots it. I switched out the stock and the forend and everything for him, but the purple trigger still stays, so we know that was the original Blazer.
Oh, the purple trigger. I love it. Oh my goodness. So if we see your husband shooting purple, we know
Yep.
that's sparkles.
Yep. You know that's Sparkles.
Love it. Love it. Okay. Last question. What is the one mistake you see beginners make all too often?
Buying a cheap gun and just going straight to the shotgun range. Find an instructor. Find a reputable instructor and spend the money on an instructor because it'll save you a lot of heartache in the long run.
I love it. I love it. It's like music to my ears because I completely agree with you on that. Like, that is 100% the way to go.
Yep.
Get an instructor, start off on the right foot, enjoy it the first time before you make mistakes.
Yep. That has always been my philosophy. It's an expensive sport, and I don't want people wasting money whenever they could save money by starting with an instructor.
I love it. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. We have really explored so much today. I feel like I could talk to you for hours. Hours about, shotguns. It's my passion. I know it's your passion. We met over it.
Yep.
Um we've we've really just deep dived into literally how to go from clay target world to hunting world, recoil, tips and tricks of what to use on, the clay target field to make you a better shooter, and then basic accessories that help you become a better shooter. Um, I'm so thankful you joined us on this podcast, Brandy. Like, thank you so much. Could you tell the audience where they could find you?
Absolutely. You can find me. The best way to find me is at Lady Outdoor Lifestyles. I actually post a lot of tips and tricks videos on there. That's my magazine. We are the only women's magazine in the world that covers the entire firearms industry. So that's the best place to follow me, and you can actually find my personal social media through there.
Awesome. Okay, everyone go follow Brandy and ask her a bunch of questions from the podcast. We
Yep.
love it. Um, thank you for tuning in to Ascend Podcast. Be sure to like and share with all your fans and favorites. I'm your host, Julia, and I'm encouraging you to follow your story wherever it might take you.
Thank you for listening to the Ascend Podcast. New every week, the conservation-driven podcast one week and our adventure video series the next. Watch the Ascend Adventure episodes on the Ducks Unlimited YouTube channel. And be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Opinions expressed by guests do not necessarily reflect those of Ducks Unlimited. Until next time, follow your outdoor story wherever it leads you. Ascend.